Salut les GOM, je suis avec Riot Franxon, le lead gameplay designer, justement un gros bonnet du côté de chez Riot Games, et je vais pouvoir lui poser plein de questions en rapport avec le gameplay League of Legends et avec d'autres choses tout simplement. C'est parti. So I'll be asking some cool questions about anything about the game.
Yep.
And the first one will be something about you. How do you, as the lead gameplay designer, choose and act on what changes to make and how big one change can be?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, when we're talking about what changes we can make, that can be anything from a new game mode to release, a new champion, all the way down to kind of like small balance changes. So the way that we'll do all of these changes is to do a lot of research about what players want, both from our internal sentiment reporting as well as just monitoring what player desires there are. And we do a lot of kind of analytics research to see what things are players actually engaging with? What are things that players are telling us that we don't have currently that, they would really like to see? So, for example, one of the approaches for 2024 and 2025 was a lot more focus on novelty. We had a very hardcore offering in terms of just having Summoner's Rift as our main offerings. And so a lot of our approach in 2024 and 2025 was driven by a lot of our research studies that players were saying, hey, we really want more novelty game modes. So we really want more lore, right? And so a lot of the seasonal approach for 2025 was, how can we add in Arena? How can we add in ARAM Mayhem, Brawl? Like the seasonal approach about bringing narrative in from Noxus and Spirit Blossom and Yunara and Xin Zhao's kind of lore through the whole Artican phase. So that was driven by a lot of what players were telling us about what they wanted and what they weren't seeing from League of Legends, in 2024.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So you wanted people to play League of Legends, but without caring about the disparity of levels between players,
Yes.
That's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and also getting into Summoner's Rift is a very long
game.
And the League is a very old game now. It's going on
15 years,
15 years and counting, right? So we need to find ways to allow people to bring their friends in as well. And so there was a lot of social motivations that were driving a lot of, you can get very involved in the lore of the game and into game modes while not having a lot of game experience. And so that's very important for us as well.
Okay. Next question is about gameplay wise.
Yeah.
I want to ask specifically about gameplay when there is something you have to change. For example, Artican for the year 2025, and maybe First Blood or Feat of Strength.
Yeah.
There is a need of change, but it is going very slowly to go on live servers. So how does it work? Why does it take so much time? And do you not know if you want to make a change? For example, First Blood is still not changed from 300 to 400.
Yeah.
Do you not want it to change, or do you take a very long time to change anything?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, we need to be very delicate for both different types of audiences. We have the very experienced audience, right, which is quite change-averse, actually. And I would say that the Western sentiments around change are very different to a lot of the Eastern sentiments around change.
Okay.
So, for example, China and Korea in particular are very, very change-averse. If you think of just sentiments around those players, they work very long hours, for example, and so they want to come back to something that they're familiar with. Whereas in Western culture, it's quite a bit of a different social landscape. And so we need to strike a good balance between it, right? Because we also sometimes are not very happy with the game state, but we know that changing it too much might result in players coming back and being like, wow, just so much stuff has changed and I don't really understand how to deal with this. And so rate of change, any change that we would make already starts at a -2 in terms of value.
Okay.
So the change that we need to make needs to be significantly positive to overcome that rate of change. Small balance changes, like changing Jax's AD by 2 is not really such a significant change. But changing how Artican works, changing rewards for First Blood, it might have large impacts on the meta, on the way that people play. And so we need to be very careful about those types of things.
Only if it's very broken, you have to nerf it.
Yes.
Very fast, but you don't want to make too many changes in the year, through the year.
Yeah.
But you will make the most changes between years.
Yeah. So for example, Ravenous, Voracious Artican, for example, right? We thought that was enough of a negative, impact on the game that we wanted to functionally remove him, right? In season 2, we changed it so that there was only one Artican form, right? And that was a significant change that we made. I mean, we also moved Grub's spawn back from 5 minutes to 8 minutes, right? Also a big change, right? So I would say that we still try to make,
of course,
pretty moderate sized changes, but we wouldn't, for example, unless it was really significantly negative, remove Grubs during the middle of the year, right? That feels a bit too much of a dramatic change.
Yeah. And for instance, the feat of strength, to change it, you will need to change one of the three things in the feat of strength, and it will be too much of a change for some creature.
Exactly. Like we changed it from being first blood to 3 kills.
But you can't change a thing as kills to, I don't know, a gold or anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Things like that.
Very good information. Following up, nothing close to this one. I see a pattern in patches. Like you will do one big one every 2 patches and one small one every 2 patches.
Yeah.
I want to know the logic behind this. Is there something else than changing the gameplay too fast? Is this the same thing like you did just before?
Yeah, I would say that it's not super intentional. Like we used to have this concept of big patch, small patch.
Yeah.
But I think that there's just a lot of, these designers work on a lot of different projects at once, right? And so, you know, the same designers that might be working on balance are also working on disruptive behavior. They're also working on seasonal changes, like, you know, what we would see with the, you know, like Otacon changes in the middle of the year or grubs. And so those designers work on a lot of different things at once. And so, you know, balance will often happen over the course of like 3 days, every 2 weeks. Okay. And so basically like we observe pro play over the weekend for that patch. And then we do all of the changes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then lock the patch. So that's kind of the nature of how we do balance. And then all of the designers that are working on that will work on other things for the rest of those days of that patch.
Okay, so you have a split team that will be looking at the pro plays to see if something is broken. Yeah. And you will have to see like the casual gameplay if nothing is like too strong or anything.
Yeah.
And then we'll do big change. But now there's nothing like one big patch and one small patch. It's just about how it's going.
Yeah, it just so happens like that's how the development ends up happening. And some patches we might have more or less bandwidth for designers to make changes, just depending on how seasonal development is going or how behavior development is going.
Okay.
Those designers share a lot of that type of work because there's a lot of very similar skill set required for all of those things. Like we wouldn't have just a balance team, for example. Like that's just like not really a good use of resources or skill set. So yeah.
Okay. Quite of a fun question. We can dodge it if you want. Can you tell us a change or many changes that never came through but would have been a very game-breaking change or a fun one? Like, you know, you told me when Otacon could spawn anywhere on the map, but it never came.
Yeah. I think so. One change that comes to mind is on Mbessa's W, it used to also have Unstoppable. So yeah, you can think of like on W. Yeah. And we quickly shut that down because it was just too unreasonable. I think it actually followed a similar development to on's W, where it's like, oh, because he's standing there for quite a while, the designer felt like he needed to kind of be able to protect himself in that situation. Yeah. And also being knocked out of this animation just looks very weird, right? So like, for example, for On, he'll be going, and it just looks weird if he gets Alistar headbutted, for example. Right? Like it just looks very funny.
It's very slow, but
yeah. And at that time, Mbessa's W actually had her stand in place for a lot longer of the time. So she was actually like this,
then you're
tanking,
like a W from
Aurelia W, for example, right?
Okay.
A very similar design.
Okay.
But we decided ultimately that it would be better to shorten the amount of time that she's soaking damage and also remove the Unstoppable, because that was just like really difficult to balance. Like she's already got enough, tools in her kit to be able to do that. And so that was one that comes to mind.
Do you have something like on the map or anything, general gameplay, like jungle camp or Soul or a creative map you didn't do, maybe the Dragon Soul?
Yeah, so we actually experimented with a very interesting change, which was, at the time we were trying to solve kind of like game stalling out.
Okay.
And so what we tried was, do you remember in Nexus Splits how the Nexuses
started moving,
get up and start moving?
Yeah, of course.
We wanted to try a similar idea with Baron. So Baron Nashor would just, at some point, after he's been in the pit for a long time and no one successfully hit him, he would just get angry. And he would just exit the pit and start walking around on the map. That was a crazy change.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Crazy change.
And nothing about, just moving, nothing
else. He would just start walking around the river.
Fuck you.
He would just start walking around the river, and it would make it a lot easier for teams to start fighting him. Right?
But I was doing some crazy fights around the river,
So we tried these crazy ideas around epic monsters just roaming around the map.
That's so cool.
We also tried a lot of changes around the pits locations.
Oh yeah?
Being in the middle of the river as well. So instead of being like on one side, it would be in a lot more central location. But we found that was too stressful for junglers ultimately, because they have to cover all of the entrances for like somebody trying to steal. And so that didn't work out so well.
Okay. It's a very...
Yeah. Another interesting thing we tried was having teleporters like the Hextech gates from alcove to alcove.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting change as well. But it ultimately didn't work out. It was just a bit too confusing and also too much map mobility for
people pushers and everything.
Yeah, so there are a lot of interesting changes that we've tried over the course of the years. Some panned out, some didn't pan out, but yeah.
It's still so fun to hear about.
Always experimenting, yeah, totally.
Let's go to the next question. I want to ask something a bit more serious about the gameplay. What do you think is a good balance for the gameplay? I mean, do you think having small disbalance is the best balance in the game, or do you think it's perfection about meta and gameplay that is the thing you want to go?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think there's no perfect game state.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think players would say in general, and we've heard a lot from this year, that players would say the game is in quite a balanced state. But at the same time, people would say, wow, the game is boring because it's too balanced, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that in a way, what has allowed League of Legends to be so successful is its constant approach to change.
Yeah.
And the feeling that the meta is always changing, right? Like Qiyana jungle appearing or
mid and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think going from mid to support and you can and some builds as well.
Yeah, especially for players who tend to play a lot of games. It's these types of ideas that help the game feeling like it's fresh. And so I would say that the most important factor for League being successful is that the game is always changing. Yeah. And it always feels like there's something new to discover and something new to play. So we take that very seriously. And there are many different states of the game that can be balanced, right? Like there's no like true balanced state because like one thing being strong might make every other thing needing to be a different way of strong to counter that and things like that.
High elo and low elo is not the same.
Exactly. And so there's always just going to be players also discovering new things.
Of course, yeah.
That might change the state of balance, right? Like if Heimerdinger, for example, is just really actually very overpowered, but no one plays him, is the game balanced, right? Like does that actually mean the game is balanced? Or is it unbalanced because Heimerdinger is secretly OP,
like
right?
Akshan, you know?
Yeah.
Akshan is like a crazy solo queue champ.
Exactly.
No one is playing him.
Exactly.
Apart from Phantasm.
Yeah,
exactly. Well,
Phantasm, yeah.
So yeah, it's like, why? How do you approach this thing?
Right. And it might be even just one player that can play it that makes it imbalanced, right? But does that mean it's balanced? Or like if in China server, for example, someone is extremely good, like Beifang playing Qiyana, for example. If he's the only person that can play Qiyana at that level, is Qiyana balanced, right? Like
it should be. I think,
right.
I guess. Exactly. I don't know, but you would rather have like many changes throughout the year,
right?
Instead of staying on a stall meta or a stall.
Right. So it depends on players' definition of balance. I think the one thing that's always constant is that we feel like we need to change the game, kind of in tandem with players' desires about what they want to see.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And for the last two questions, it will be, as I said, apart from gameplay. So maybe you're not so okay to ask a question about. But I wanted to ask about quantity against quality of solo queue games, which make casual players and creators and even solo queue players like pro players not less interested in playing solo queue on stream or as a competitive, because I feel like they're not rewarded for playing good, but more like playing many games, What do you think is the key to avoiding this?
Yeah, we definitely need to strike a good balance between needing to play a lot of games. I'm assuming when you're saying like quantity of games, you're talking about like to climb to get back to your...
Yeah, you need like 20 games to gain 100 LP because you will have some low quality games that will be like out of your control. So you'll have to play more games, like every competitive games.
I think that's just going to be a natural consequence of flipping a fair coin.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that we really strive to make true in matchmaking, for example, is that every game feels like it's a fair coin.
Yeah.
You would not be able to predict who's going to win the game before the match plays.
But you want to have some impact and feel it,
But naturally, like if you were to flip a coin 1,000 times, for example, a player would be in a lose streaking situation or a lose streaking situation about 10% of the time. Like 5 losses in a row or something like this. That's just a natural outcome of like flipping a coin that many times, right? Yeah. And so just at a baseline, players are going to need to play a lot of games to make sure that, to see that, like if you were to flip a coin only 10 times, the outcome might be very different, right?
Yeah.
So that's just the way that random chance works,
More like on the side of the people complaining about, as I want it to be fair, but they see, I think they see someone throwing in their team every game or so. So it will be like, I don't care about playing solo queue because I have to play 100 games to get 50 like decent chance of winning. Then on the 51 I will get 25 winnings and 25 losses,
Right.
So I would be a bit complaining about this. So do you think it's like a bit force the statement or like there is less impact from your side and more from the other side because there are like too much trolling players right now? Or
Yeah. So I would say that there's a few things that we want to do to make that experience overall feel better. Most recently, for example, we reduced matchmaking times in EU West and Oceania by 40%. In ranked. One of the things that we did, we found a new optimization for our matchmaking queue times that kind of like reduced time to game. And it's something that we're really enthusiastic about doing so more because it can feel extremely bad to wait in queue for 20 minutes and then get in a game that's repeatedly dodged because someone's one OTP got banned and like all of these types of things and just get in a loop of like, oh, so-and-so's OTP got banned. Okay, like I have to dodge like all of these types of things. So we want to speed up that process a lot. So yeah, we're focusing a lot on matchmaking queue times as well as focusing a lot on disruptive behavior. Like
when did you do the changes about matchmaking?
It was about 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago?
Yeah, we're still monitoring the changes, but it's one of those things that we have a very large focus on. And it's hard to notice kind of like day to day unless we point it out. And then you would like take...
I didn't see any changes. Yeah. Can you tell us what changes?
So we found basically some optimizations on the back end. It's kind of hard to explain. We just found some optimizations that made it so that we can reduce the wait times by kind of figuring out whether people who would otherwise be in queue for a very long time, basically like it's kind of complicated to explain, but it's basically like finding if people would otherwise be in a very long queue and like fast forwarding their wait times so that they're already like some way into their matchmaking journey. So basically like you can think of matchmaking as like if I'm matching with you, right? And I'm a diamond player, right? And you're a challenger player. It would take a very long time for you to match with a diamond player, right?
But
in fact, it might even be impossible.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we were doing initially was trying to find ways that we could automatically, before the queue even starts, see who's in queue and basically say, oh, actually, like, we should start matchmaking grandmasters with challengers immediately from the beginning because we know that they're never going to find a challenger versus challenger match at this time, right? Like if it's in, off-peak hours, like let's say you're playing at 3 a.m., you're never going to find a full challenger game, right? So instead we say, okay, well, because you're never going to find a full challenger game, immediately start matching with grandmasters straight away. But the game was going to be matched with grandmasters anyway, right? So instead of having the person wait for 20 minutes to find, because like we know that there's not going to be that many challenges, just match them with grandmasters straight away, right?
And to try to keep the quality of the game, like not floods and everything.
And the quality of the game would be the same because you were never going to find a full challenger match anyway.
Right? And many people would be filled in the game anyway. And because we talk about this one, I just want to make a quick question about this. There's been like many complaints about filled players, and I want to ask why. A very straightforward question. Why is it that we don't have like the same amount of filled in each game every time, and if possible on the same role,
Yeah, I would say that it is a very high priority for us to solve.
Yeah.
It's in fact like one of the highest priorities for us to solve. One of the problems is that trying to find a team with a fill and having that fill be in the same role can be very difficult with the way that our matchmaking formula is currently constructed. And so it's one of the areas that we think that we really want to improve. But right now, it's quite difficult for us to get that in a timely manner without making the queue time really, really long. So imagine like you're trying to find another jungle fill player.
Yeah.
It can be quite challenging to also have that jungle fill player be the same MMR, have the same role allocations, all of these types of things on the other players on the team. So it's something that we really want to improve. And we think we have some good paths forward there, but it's just going to take some time. I would say by 2026, it's probably pretty likely that we would have a good, probably have a good solution for some of these things. But yeah, right now our focus is a lot on getting queue times down.
And what about, I think I saw Drew talking about this on Twitter, but it was just an idea. What about having 2 roles you choose to play and 1 role you wanna the least get on, in the game? Do you think it will change a bit about how the matchmaking is going?
Yeah, we actually tried a pilot of this in some regions several years ago.
Yeah.
It was quite a disaster actually, because everybody would veto the role that was already auto-filled. So basically, we would never be able to fire games because, for example, let's just say that support was the role that was the autofill role, like, you know, like only 10% of people wanted to play support, for example, everyone would also veto support. They'll be like, I don't want to play support. So then nobody is playing support. Yeah, so if you could veto the autofill role, then the games would just not start, right? Because you would not be able to autofill anybody. And you also don't have anybody voluntarily queuing for the role. Yeah. So we tried that before and it was a pretty disastrous. So I would say that, yeah, that's not really a solution. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And for the last one, I just want to ask about something about the streamer mode, because I feel like it's very good to like a bit free from all the toxicity.
Yeah.
It was made for streamers, and if you see any games, you see like there's a majority now of players going streamer mode just to flee from this toxicity again. That you are working on right now. I think like it's a very big change you do with Drew talking about it, and we see the changes.
Yeah.
But right now, people are still using the streamer mode to flee from this thing. Did you see it, and what do you want to do about that?
Yeah, I think that it is a kind of expected outcome. Like Valorant, for example, has a very similar approach. And one of the things that we think is an opportunity for the future is like making the game more social.
Yeah.
And this, you know, change, you know, as a side effect of like helping streamers feel safe, also makes the game a bit less social because everybody feels like they're a bot, like a face person in your game. And so one of the areas that we want to work on for 2026 is trying to find ways that we can make the game more social, right? Like if you were to have a good game with somebody and you were to add them as a friend, for example, it's like, oh wow, like that was a really honorable thing to do. And maybe we like bump your honor score up, or we find ways to reward, you know, if I played with you and we had a great game together and you gave me a fist bump after the game, like we got some reward for that, or, you know, these types of things. So I would say that it is a short-term cost that we feel like we have to pay to protect the streamer's experience, but long-term, we want to make the game more social. So we would find ways to like kind of get around it.
And just a bonus question about this thing. Do you think it's possible to make like a lobby between games where you will be like in training, but with your friend list, just automatically going in people's, you have a friend in your friend list, you can join up his lobby and just chill in the map-made League of Legends thing, you know, a bit like any other games have. When you are looking for a game, you can just go in the lobby, you know?
Yeah. This
is a big, Legends lobby.
Yeah, this is a big dream for us. I think, unfortunately, like making something like that is very expensive and very technically complicated. So it's not something that I think we would immediately be looking at doing. Like there are a lot of things that are kind of like lower hanging fruits first. I would say that it is a very, 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 very expensive thing to do.
Like a public lobby, you know?
Yeah, like having public lobbies or having guilds and clans and things like that. Yeah. I think that like for better or worse right now, like Discord is probably the best way to do it right now. And it's a space that we think is very valuable, but it's not something that we think is going to be, at least for now, a competitive advantage for League of Legends, right? Like a lot of different games are actually a lot better at delivering on this type of social experience than we are. And so right now our focus is on improving the game environment and improving the quality of just like when you get into game, how does that experience feel? Like there's no scripters, there's no boosters, there's like these types of disruptive behavior. That's a state that we want to get to first before we start thinking about like, making the game more social. Because we do want to make the game more social. We do want to make sure that honor matters. We want to make sure that, you know, League players who are being positive contributors to the community feel rewarded. Yeah. But that has to come after we've like, you know, quote unquote, cleaned the streets or made the game environment a little better.
That's why actually the streamer mode is used. Because when there will be sociality without, when the street will be thin, there won't be any more streamer mode apart from the streamer maybe and everything. Thank you, Froxon, for giving me the time to answer the questions. I will see you maybe on the street for the wars and see you next event, I guess.
Sounds awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to the fans.
Goodbye. Et voilà, j'espère que l'interview vous a plu avec Riot Froxon. Merci encore à Riot de me donner l'occasion d'interviewer des Rioteurs. Et si vous avez une question à leur poser tout simplement, n'hésitez pas à la mettre en commentaire. Je ne dis pas que je pourrais la prendre, mais avec les occasions que j'ai, j'aurai peut-être l'occasion d'en prendre une et de lui poser tout simplement. Ciao, bye.